What was I going to? Oh, I was going to mention.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
It's time for Jim's mentions here on the show.
Well, I'm on a bench and I'm mentioning. I was going to mention this past week's episode of Dark Side of the Ring featuring the Sandman. Because I was going to bring up, because last week, I believe it was, we talked about the episode on Sherry Martel, and they've done episodes on Harley Race this season, Chris Colt. By the way, the season finale coming up this week, probably Tuesday night, maybe tomorrow, maybe by the time you hear this, it will have aired. It's going to be Black Saturday, but it's going to be rerun. So jump in and catch it many times. I'm on it.
Is that a one-part or a two-part episode?
That is, I believe it's just a one-part, unfortunately.
Oh, okay. For some reason, I thought it was going to be a two-parter.
Well, don't take my word for it then. Now you've made me doubt myself, as Mama Cornette would say. But just continue, folks, continue watching Vice TV, 10 o'clock Eastern Time, every Tuesday night until the next season starts, just to make sure you don't miss anything. But nevertheless, the point is that this last week was Sandman. And I'm going to, in interest of full disclosure, I have met Sandman but do not know Sandman. In all honesty, I was in the locker room with him a few times when he worked for Dennis Coralluzzo in the early 90s, but when he was still with the surfboard. And then I've been in a couple of the same places, but we've never sat down and had any substantial conversation. And I obviously, I would think it would be a secret to no one. I've never been a fan of his work because it was what it was. I don't like that style of matches in general. And I'm not going to come out here and fucking knock it, oh, this motherfucker, because I'm not mad at him personally or anything. But I think this episode, it kind of illustrated what I didn't like about ECW and what I thought was wrong with ECW. And not only from a business perspective of what they were showing the fans and the product that they were presenting, but what do the kids call it? The culture? The operation of the business and what was allowed, what was tolerated, what was encouraged, that then, unfortunately, non-creative, copycat, weak-minded people would simulate and inseminate and copycat and karaoke and tribute act to death to this day. And I know a lot of people are going, oh, Paul presented. I'm not saying Paul Ian a genius. Look at that ragtag bunch of misfits that he mostly had to work with, and that he made that much noise and didn't end up more broke at the end in bankruptcy court. It was amazing. And I've always said Paul's a genius at creative, getting most out of the least, verbal fucking, he's the fucking promo god right now. But especially at that point in time when he was that much younger, he had no fucking restraint or patience. It's why complete dipshits like Russo, who couldn't swing on Paul's fucking chin, or either one of them, but copied his shit because it appealed to shallow-minded people who wanted to see folks bashing each other with shopping carts. Brian, is that an oversimplification, or is that kind of actually what happened? Every mark that got into business after Paul created this phenomenon for basically a specific Northeastern market, they tried to copy it without understanding that they weren't as good as he was, and it didn't even work for him in the long run, and they couldn't fucking get off of it. Am I overstating that?
Well, for the record, you've never been a big ECW fan, and I say that as the person who in the 90s was sending you ECW tapes. You were never a big ECW fan, but you always tried to keep up with it so you understood what was happening. And, early on, it was a mesh of a lot of different stuff. You had Terry Funk, you had Shane Douglas, who, when he first started doing those promos, people talked about him. You had Sabu, who was the Superman of the Indies at that time.
Yeah.
And then you had different people that would come in for shows, but Paul started filling in with the locals and the guys that he previously worked with when he briefly worked with the Savaldis, like Tommy Dreamer, like Taz. Started getting these guys in there, figuring out a way to get them, who will all be local-ish. I mean, if you're from New York, I'm considering that local for Philadelphia. Cheaper than other talent. I mean, ECW at that time, under Eddie Gilbert, right before Paul took over, they were using, and I'm nothing against these wrestlers, but just if you try to think about how much Todd Gordon was spending, if it's Tommy Dreamer, the Sandman, Taz, Tommy Cairo, like guys like that, or Don Morocco, Tito Santana, Jimmy Snuka even.
Guys that are going to work a half to 25% as hard for twice as much plus a plane ticket.
And I'm not even going to get into the quality of the work, but it was definitely time to do something different, and the Sandman was there. The Surfer thing's lame. And he was really the first one. Him and Public Enemy, I would say, were the first two things under Paul Heyman that really took, that were his creations.
And see, that's the thing, is that people who... ECW obviously still has its fans, and I'm not saying that all of it was bad, and I'm saying that Paul did most of it better than anybody else could have. What I am saying is that while the people who really want to defend it will put, well, Eddie Guerrero and Rey Mysterio and Chris Benoit and Dean Malenga, yes, those were great talents, and he brought those guys and exposed them to the modern audience, or to the United States audience. And he used Terry Funk exceptionally well and understood how to make him a legend. And his work with that was impeccable. But the problem is that dim-witted dipshits' superficial takeaway from this one-of-a-kind promotion that couldn't have worked at that time anywhere else but Philadelphia, New York, the Northeast, and actually couldn't work anywhere on a mainstream basis. The takeaway from all of those people is furniture and chairs and violence and blood and barbed wire and broken glass and set shit on fire and cussing and pile driving women.
Yeah, it was the stuff that you would never have seen on any other wrestling show ever. If you were trying to sell ECW to someone, you're not going to show them, respectfully, you're probably not going to show them a Terry Funk match with Shane Douglas. You're probably going to show them a brawl around the arena with tables and chairs and all sorts of stuff thrown in there. Probably Sabu, too, breaking tables.
Yes.
It was
and that's why they couldn't get it on TV, because the TV stations didn't want that shit. Because it was not only low budget, but it was fucking iffy as far as, are we going to get complaints or in trouble? That's why they were on Sports Channel Philadelphia or whatever the fuck. What Paul was doing was, yes, it was an underground thing and the grunge and the blah, blah, blah. And you got to admit, Paul 30 years ago was a little bit more excitable and less reliable in terms of his scheduling and where he was going to be at what time and when than he is now. But he was trying to smoke and mirror the thing until or if he could get either the big pay-per-view deal that they would take off from, or whatever he was thinking. But that's why he was paying six figures to wrestlers when his gate receipts for goddamn the month were six figures. And but the point is, getting back to the point I was trying to make, that Sandman's Dark Side of the Ring drove home, was that's what everybody's taken away from when they chant ECW. It's because of tables, it's because of furniture, it's because of all that shit. And the people who were fans of that type of thing in the 90s are unfortunately the ones that became wrestlers 10 and 15 years later and think that that's what the business has to have, which is why we've never been able to fucking get rid of it. And I don't know now if we ever can get rid of it, and it will never mean anything ever again. But at the same time, it won't go away. And go ahead.
Another thing too is Paul Heyman, I'm not taking anything away from him being a wrestling genius. On multiple levels he is. But specifically during that period with ECW, he had revolutionary ideas, not necessarily revolutionary arcs with conclusions. And I think he's much more of a genius now with what he's doing than he was then with ECW. And that's not to take away from, again, revolutionary.
Well, yeah, but it was 30 years ago, and he's 30 years. We were all smarter now. I don't know about you.
Paul had great ideas, things that people would talk about, but there was never like an ending. There was never anything that was a reasonable conclusion to anything.
Well, plus the thing is, with planning and or execute, it was all it was all in his head, and he still did this 20 years ago with OVW when they banished him and sent him down here after they banished me, because I wanted to be here, so they didn't want me to be, and he didn't want to be here, so they were trying to run him off. But he'd drive Danny Davis crazy because he'd just come in with a sheet with a list of the fucking matches and said, well, just shoot everything and we'll fucking put it together like he used to with ECW. And he said, motherfucker, number one, we don't have that kind of fucking equipment. Number two, I'm not going to stay here at fucking 7 o'clock. Danny Davis was staying till 7 o'clock in the morning. When I was booking, we had a finished TV show at 10:45 p.m. So there was no prep. If he had a good idea, oh yeah, do that. But there was no planning of it. So there was no paperwork and there was no plan of where to go from there and the dates of when to meet such and such milestones and whatever. But I guess that's the thing, is that in trying to make this underground counterculture thing that could never be on mainstream TV, then what you did was you inspired a bunch of or what Paul did was inspire a bunch of mark-minded dumb fucks, whether wrestlers or potential bookers, writers, whatever, with half or less of his ability to think that, well, we'll just dumb this down and clean it up and put it on national TV, which is where we got the sanitized and homogenized WWF style hardcore. And the ECW fans didn't like that because they didn't go far enough, but it ruined the WWF fans' expectations because now they think you got to break a table in every big fucking match. So it was something that, because with the stars and personalities involved in the bigger companies, yes, there was some the Tazes and the talent that could legitimately go somewhere else and did. They were primarily the wrestling guys. Sandman, the WWF never wanted him except for the reunion, and he didn't fit there anyway, because that's another thing that this dark side made me kind of squeamish about, is it presented the idea that before with Sherry, yes, she was on pain medication and had her demons, and everybody else had their demons, but they were stars. They were on national television. They made money at one point, whatever they did with it, up to them. They were someone. Here you've got a guy that the whole show was basically, well, this fucking drunk guy that wasn't very responsible in his private life decided he wanted to be a wrestler, and he ran into a goddamn promotion where the promoter would let him do any fucking thing he wanted, and that's how he got over. But he could never work anywhere else because he wasn't really a fucking wrestler. He had a great entrance, and he bashed people over the head with shit while he was drunk. Was that the summation of this goddamn show in an hour?
In not as many words, but yes.
Yes. And that, and I'm just saying, doesn't that make the wrestling business look kind of sketchy? And Todd Gordon.
Well, it is dark side of the ring. If there was ever a show to make wrestling look sketchy, this.
Well, no, but I mean the whole business, or at least these people's business. That's what the whole ECW thing and the culture that it fostered, or the backstage thing. And Paul was not taking any of them bumps through the fucking furniture. I've taken a few bumps through fucking furniture. But only when necessary, and not off the fucking roof. And I tried to never ask anybody to do anything that I wouldn't do or wouldn't do if I could do it. I can't do a standing drop kick. Blow me. But he was telling these guys to fucking do this shit, and the scaffolds and the barbed wire and the hanging shit. And everybody in the locker room's on pain pills, and everybody's on fucking drugs. And Todd Gordon, the money man, the fat, jowled senior citizen that he is now, said if you passed a piss test, you couldn't work for us because we were all doing it. And I didn't think that ECW was particularly that good for the fucking appearance of goddamn wrestling when it was happening, because all this shit was happening. And in hindsight, with all the people that have had body parts replaced or, need something replaced, or they've had substance abuse issues of some kind, or their careers came to premature ends, or they faded into obscurity because of cognitive issues, or combinations of all those things. Was it fucking worth it for that? What the fuck? And everybody, when Smoky Mountain Wrestling went out of business, I paid the boys, stiffed a couple of radio stations and a TV station, and nobody had brain damage or a goddamn substance abuse issue that they didn't have when they started working there. Is all I'm saying.
That is what you're saying. This is the review of the Sam. Any thoughts on his career or any of the interviews?
That's my thoughts on all. I'm not anything personal with this guy, but he's fucking irresponsible, fucking drunk that got into wrestling business. And Paul said, "I don't give a fuck what you do." And he gets over with a great entrance with music that they didn't pay for by going out there drunk and bashing himself over the head with a beer can until he bleeds, and then having garbage indie matches, bashing people with shit and getting bashed with shit. There's no talent to that, and that's what so many of these fucking dipshits have goddamn taken away, that think that that's what wrestling is, that it insults me on a deeply personal basis. So that's my view on the Sandman's career. Wrestling is bad taste in good taste, and ECW was bad taste in bad taste. Remember, you might have seen some of the OVW shows. For about 6 months, I had, either between 2000 and 2001, I had an OVW hardcore title because everybody else was doing it. All right. So we'll do that, because Flash Flanagan, he was wonderful at those kind of matches, and I was trying to give him something at first, and then later BJ Payne, a few guys. But to be honest, yes, you could flip the table in, and nobody was going crazy with barbed wire, and it was still Kentucky with the commission. We couldn't do, blood, but we'd break a table every once in a while, or the guy to get hit with a chair, we do the garbage can or whatever. And you could do the fire extinguisher spot. But then after a while, I was looking at the TV one night, and there's garbage laying in the ring, like on every other one of these horseshit wrestling shows that were on national television that I was trying to not be like. And I say, you know what? I don't want to see that picture of a bunch of garbage laying in my fucking ring on my TV. And I sent out a memo to the boys saying we're abolishing the hardcore title because I don't want to see a bunch of garbage laying in my ring on my TV. So everybody's got to go back to learning how to not break the rules. And every once in a while, we'd still book a gimmick match or whatever the fuck, but it's too much. It's too much. Is that too much for you, Brian?
It's too much for me. Maybe I should start a store.
Brian, that is very true, because if some of these hardcore wrestlers had just thought ahead, instead of damaging their skeletal structure and destroying their brain cells and breaking their body parts until they look like slinkies walking down the fucking stairs, instead they should have opened a store. They should have opened an online store. As a matter of fact, back in 1993, if you had opened an online store, I bet you'd have made a lot of money by now. But that's because Shopify wasn't around. Now any jackleg can make money, because Shopify will take you and hold you by the nose and lead you through this whole thing. They're the global commerce platform that helps you sell at every stage of your business. Now, let's say you want to sell the purple widgets or the orange Framostats, or maybe even some blinker fluid. Whatever you want to sell, you just call up Shopify. over there at shopify.com/JCE. That's the code you got to use in lowercase, by the way. And also, this is the secret knock. So then you go to shopify.com and you say, I want to sell this stuff. What can I do? And they're going to just basically do the whole, they got experts. They're going to help you turn the browsers into buyers. They're going to lay out your store. They're going to fucking take all your money. They're going to leave you broke and disgusted in a ditch. They're going to do everything for you from start to finish. You'll go up and you'll go down. Shopify will be the only constant there.
Well, for the record, they're not going to leave you broke and in a ditch and busted and dusted or whatever it is that you said there.
That's only when they're finished with you. But if you've got an idea for
they're not going to be finished with you. There's no finishing.
Well, as long as you're still producing for the state, they can help you launch your online store. They can help you with your first real life store. They can even do that. They can go all the way to, did we just hit 1 million orders type of store? Because they're big like that. They help you grow. They make you contagious so you spread everywhere. And then they've got their hooks into a variety of people through you. And then they're just selling stuff all over the place. Every once in a while, some of this money is going to trickle back to you. But make sure they don't catch you sticking it in your pocket or they'll be hell to pay because they have files on you. But folks, also, you can sell more with less effort.
They don't have files on you.
Well, not that you know of. Thanks to the Shopify Magic department, which is powered by Al. Oh, that's AI. I'm sorry. So they got their fingers in the phony humans too. And Shopify powers 10% of all e-commerce in the United States. They're the global force behind millions of entrepreneurs of every size across 175 countries. So they're everywhere. If you try to get away, they will know where you are, no matter what corner of the globe you flee to.
You're not going to have to flee, especially from them.
Well, I didn't say you were fleeing from them, but if you think you're going to be somewhere and they don't know about it, well, you're sadly mistaken. 170. How many countries are there in the world? They're in 175.
That's a lot of them.
That's a lot of them. And Shopify's extensive help resources are there to support your success every step of the way. Just cooperate at all costs. Businesses that grow with Shopify. And right now, Brian, how much should this cost, a service like this, where they can take your product, set up the site, the store, the boom, take in the money, give you part of it? How much should that cost? A lot of money, right?
Right.
Well, it doesn't. Because right now you can sign up for a $1 a month trial period at shopify.com/JCE, lowercase, shopify.com/JCE, and you can sign up for a $1 a month trial. $1 a month, that's 3.3 cents per day, except in February where it'd be a little more expensive. But then again, I still don't think it's going to break your fucking budget. So you're going to make a ton of money. You are going to make more money than people selling pussy on a troop train. If you go right now to shopify.com, they're going to make you big bucks.
That's right. Big bucks from Shopify.
And those aren't the counterfeit bucks either.